let's start. So welcome to this public lecture. First of all, I want just to say a few introducing words on our speaker today, who is Professor Matthias Schmidt from the University of Augsburg in Germany. We are actually old colleagues. I think some 12, 13 years ago, we were colleagues at the Center for Development Studies at Berlin Free Universities. And Matthias moved on then to, I think, Hanover, right? Was a professor for economic geography. And then some 10 years ago, he was appointed professor for human geography and transformation studies at the University of Augsburg. And his focus is, or regional focus is on Central Asia and also on South Asia. And today he will present some work, I guess it's coming from his habilitation research, and is focusing on Kyrgyzstan and particularly on political ecology in Kyrgyzstan's mountains. So, Matthias, the floor is yours.
Welcome. Okay, thank you very much for this friendly introduction. Yes, this is what is happening here now. I'm glad to be here. It's an honor for me. Thank you very much. Thank you for your interest, or I don't know how much you are forced to participate in this presentation, but I hope that I can await your interest and listen to me. I would like to give a talk on political ecology. So this is actually a research approach which I was working on for more than 10 years, maybe 15 years already. And I think it is worth to look a little bit on this approach. I don't know if you are familiar with it. If not, the better. If you know already something about it, then hopefully forgive me if it's somehow a double for you. And I would like to link it with my research in Kyrgyzstan, which is some years ago. However, the results or what I wanted to show is still, I think, very actual and very current. So, I mean, it's still valid, and hope to bring you this approach to you a little bit nearer. Now unfortunately, I have to deal with two of these devices. Hopefully, yeah. So what you can see here are the forests in southern Kyrgyzstan, near the Fergana Valley, at the border to Uzbekistan. At the back, you can see the Fergana Ridge, the Fergana Range with peaks up to more than 4,000 meters. And these forests, I mean, you know better than me the landscapes and the environment of Central Asia. It is usually quite dry, arid, yeah. And so far, these are very special forests in this usually or mainly arid Central Asia. And it's not a matter of course that these forests still exist today. But first we have to ask what means forest for us. What do we see in forests? What do we want to do with the forests? Some people go into the forest for recreation. Others are interested in resources, in different resources. And then the next question is, what are resources actually? We see nowadays forests as resources for giving products such as wood, firewood, wood for furniture. Maybe there are some fruits or animals. And insofar, it is not given that the forest is a resource or the trees are resources. We give them a meaning. And so far, therefore, I have these two citations. One that so natural resources, just like forests, are not natural resources. Resources are not, they become. They become because of human interests in specific ecological entities. We make wood, nuts, fruits to resources. So we human beings see or define land and natural entities such as wood, fruits, nuts, grass, herbs as resources. We give them value. They serve us for our well-being or whatever. However, natural resources are limited. This means that people, groups or actors, single actors can compete about them. Yeah? And the actual form, how resources are used, who has access to them, or who control the resources, are the result of political negotiations and of power relations. Actors or groups with power can define who own resources, who will get access to resources, what is allowed or what is about or what is forbidden. Usually the state has a big role in this, and that this is a natural reserve, a protection zone, or here you can exploit the trees or whatever. Here you can farm your animals. In such a way, forest or other parts of the environment can be seen as a battleground of diverse interests. However, the number of actors, of people interested in such natural entities, their interests in resources or the regulating institutions can change over time. This can happen gradually over a long time, or suddenly in the context of political upheavals or political transitions. For example, I don't know, 150 years ago, nobody was interested in uranium. Later it became known that you can get a lot of energy out of it. So it became a very valuable resource. You see what I hope you can understand what I mean. So this means resources are relational and a dynamic category. And Central Asia, or here Kyrgyzstan, is a good example for important transformation, political transformations. And the premise here is that such transformations also influence and change the dealing with the environment, the perception of the environment, or how resources are defined. So we have a couple of fundamental political upheavals in the history of Kyrgyzstan. First, the conquest and annexation in 1876 by the Russian Tsarist Empire. This was the phase or the era of colonialism. Then the October Revolution in 1917, the Red Revolution, and the collectivization in the 1930s under Stalin. So the phase of socialism, and then the dissolution of the USSR and the independence of the Kyrgyz Republic in 1991. And this was the phase or the era we are at the moment, with pretty much capitalistic. So here just a short glimpse on the map. So this is where I'm talking about what I'm talking about. You can see here the location of these forests at the edge of the Fergana Valley. And here's a map of the forest cover in Kyrgyzstan. As most Central Asian countries, Kyrgyzstan has not much forested areas. They have some Tian Shan firs around Issyk-Kul. Then they have junipers in the south, and then what you can see here in this, what is it, a violet color, these walnut fruit forests. And this is how it looks like. Forests in southern Kyrgyzstan. And what is special or particular in this forest is that they don't only consist of walnut trees, but of a great variety of trees and shrubs, such as walnut, wild apples, wild plums, wild pears, barberry, rose hips, etc. So a huge variety of different shrubs and shrubs and trees. And you can see here some roses, for example, apples in the middle, or in middle upper part here, berberids. And what I was asking in my research are the following research questions. To what extent do political systems influence the perception, the value, and the use of land and natural resources? How did the perception, the value, the use of the natural resources and the environment change over the course of time during different historical epochs or eras? Which actors are involved in each historical epoch? Which interests in land or natural resources are articulated by whom? And which institutions regulate land and resource management? Are you familiar with the term of institutions? You know what it means? Somebody want to explain or not? I mean, there are hundreds of books and papers about institution, and everybody defines it a little bit different. But for me, I mean, the basic definition for me is institutions are the rule of the game, yeah, and the organizations or the, I don't know, yeah, organizations who control these rules, yeah. So this is what I understand here as institutions. So this can be laws, this can be traditions, this can be governments, etc. Same word here, yeah. No, okay, anyhow. Local governance, local governments. And for this, to find answers to my questions, I used the research approach of political ecology, which is not new, which is established, I think, 30, 40 years ago already. And you can see there are a lot of publications and even handbooks about political ecology. And I just would like to introduce it to you, to give you some ideas what means political ecology. Would like to give you some ideas of the principles of political ecology. So the premise is ecological problems are at their core social and political issues. Yeah, and this is very much against what the founders of political ecology called apolitical, so non-political ecology, because very often all ecological studies or environmental studies are not political. They just deal how, I don't know, the plants change or the soil is degraded or whatever, without asking what is behind it and who is actually responsible, how soils are used or how plants are, I don't know, used. Yeah. So they said ecological problems are problems, are political issues. This means the environment is highly politicized. Yeah. It is seen as a battlefield of diverging interests. And it is very much actors-oriented. Environmental change or the degradation of environmental, they say, is the result of political, social, and economic actions. And another important point, another important principle of political ecology is it is thinking in various scholars, in different levels. Yeah, you can say multi-scholar contexts. So the research should cover the local scale, the regional scale, and the global scale. That we have geographical scales and hierarchies of socio-economic organizations, the individual, the household, the village, the region, the state, and they all can influence the utilization of a specific part of the environment. So political ecology analysis usually include the analysis of place-based actors, which are on the ground, and non-place-based actors and institutions. For example, a farmer deals within frame conditions. There are laws what he can do. Yeah, in some countries, the farmers are said what they should grow. For example, I hope I'm right. In Tajikistan, farmers are not really free in what they cultivate. The state tell them what they do. Yeah, they have to follow. In Europe, for example, they have to follow specific regulations concerning the utilization of pesticides. Yeah. And these decisions are done on different levels. So yeah, you see how these levels are interconnected. And the analysis or political ecological studies try to cover the different levels. Then it looks at power relations. They are very much relevant for negotiating resource use. Yeah, who has the power? These persons usually can set what is done. They can influence the utilization and they can dominate it. And it says also that resource conflicts are not the result of natural scarcity only, or maybe it could be, but of social regulations governing access. Yeah, it's the same with our world hunger. Actually, yeah, we produce enough food for the world's population, but it's a question of not having access of some groups. Therefore, we have hunger. People are starvation. Yeah. And it is also following the constructivism, so the environment and nature. Oh, moment, sorry, here are not ontologically given, but constructed and socially produced. Further, the focus here, following a post-structuralism, I think you heard of it maybe, Foucault, I said, is well known to you somehow. So they also focus on discourses and language that produce unequal power relations, yeah, or are produced by them. Then we look at case studies. So this is actually how methodological part, so to understand what is going on. So case studies, empirical research on the ground, this is actually what people do who follow the political ecology. And the historical dimension is important to understand what is going on. So you need very often what was before. How does it come that the present state of utilization, the present state of the environment? And the goal finally is, so there's a normative commitment following the idea of environmental justice. The goal is to improve people's living conditions and ensure sustainable protection, sustainable use of the environment and of natural resources. Yeah. So in a nutshell, change and interventions in the environment are the result of political, social, and economic actions at individual, local, national, and global levels. I think it would be at least good if you take this as a message, take-home message. Yeah. Power relations are reflected in the negotiation and implementation of environmental uses, and environment is seen as a battlefield of diverging interests. Oh, sorry, that's here. Yeah. So what does it mean for our forests in Kyrgyzstan? Now I turn to the case study. As I said, this is typical for studies in for political, or with the approach of political ecology, is to look at specific cases. So the economic utilization or the ecological protection, and these forests are there because they are somehow protected, are consequences of political and socio-economic frame conditions and interpretations of territories or ecological entities. So land and resource utilizations never happen in a non-political arena. This is really the premise of political ecology, what they want to do. So let's turn to my case study. So the central question was here to see how do the political socio-economic regimes, or the political systems, you can call them, influence the resource management institutions and the resource management and resource utilization, because somehow, very often you have a difference between de jure and de facto. De jure, de facto, yeah. I mean, there can be rules, but people don't follow them. Just different things. And that's what I wanted to find out. How did the different socio-economic regimes change the management and the utilization of these walnut fruit forests in southern Kyrgyzstan? For this, I conducted standardized household surveys, qualitative and narrative interviews, with such advocals, for example, here, and participant observations. And we also got the chance to have a look into the archives, which was a big chance actually to see what was written there and how is what were the measures by the state agencies concerning these forests. And now we go through the history. I would start before the first upheaval, I called it, or the first transformation, which I mentioned before the Russians came into the territory. So, and I think the relevance of the forest was very local, only for the local people in pre-colonial times. There's not much. It was very difficult to find anything about it. So Kyrgyzstan here some explorers wrote, is seen as terra incognita, so people don't know, we don't know, or we didn't know much about the area. As far as I could reconstruct it is the forests were used, they're used as a source of firewood, of fruits, and of pasture ground. There were traditional utilization rights on land and forests, and the forests were the property of the Khan of Kokand. Yeah? And the main utilization of the forest was charcoal production. So people used the wood, produced charcoal, and sold it on the markets to get some income necessary to buy foodstuff or other stuff. Yeah. There were some settlements in the Fergana Valley, of course, inhabited by Uzbeks, and in the, as you know, in the mountain areas on the pasture ground, there lived the Kyrgyz families, the Kyrgyz groups, usually as nomads, and they were more interested in animal husbandry, not so much in these forests. Things changed after the annexation by the Russians. So there was the first, I would say, formalization of forestry under Russian colonial rule between 1876 and 1917. And it was very interesting for me to find some old documents and to see why they started to protect these forests. You have, I mean, you must imagine, this is more than 100 years ago that they wrote, the Russian administration wrote, we have to protect these forests because they are important to regulate the water cycle and they help to protect erosion. Very modern, I would say. I mean, this is what every environmentalist today say. Yeah, we need forests, very important for the water cycle and for erosion protection. So mountain forests are seen as protectors of water resources that give life to Turkestan. And life to Turkestan means these water sources, as you know very well, are important in arid Central Asia for all the irrigation. Now, irrigation of grains, of cotton, etc. Yeah? And the Russians started already with conservation measures, to protect these forests. There were and they qualified the forest as state property. This is, I always have one sentence about the ownership or the property. I mean, who owns actually these forests, who can use them, because this changed also over the time. So the forests were codified as state property. But of course, it was the time of the colonialism. I think probably in Russia, they don't call it in Russian history that they have been a colonial empire, but anyhow, I would define it as such because administration, etc., were mainly dominated by Russians. And they also have some, this was combined with restrictions for the local population. They were not allowed anymore to produce charcoal, yeah, because the administration wanted to protect these forests. And then the Russians also find another resource, which, I mean, the Kyrgyz and the Uzbeks are not at all interested in what you can see here. Part of a tree, of a walnut trees. Burlwood it is called. Burlwood is, if you cut it in pieces, this is not a real one, you know, but in luxury cars or in very expensive furniture, you use this burlwood, and therefore, and this is what the Russians were interested in, to get these burls. Yeah, it became a resource. It became a very valuable resource for them, and yeah, and they cut it. They took it and sold it to make profit out of it. Then we come to the next phase, to the next area, the Soviet Union, and I call it here the planned forest utilization during the Soviet era between 1922 and 1991. Land and forests were defined as property of the people. As I mentioned already before, starting at the end of the 1920s, mainly then during the 1930s, there were these processes of collectivization and nationalization and the founding of large state and collective farms. You know, this is Sovkhoz and Kolkhoz. And this also happened, of course, in the area of the walnut fruit forests. So-called Orech sovkhos were founded in 1930. So a collective farm, or it was a state farm for forestry. Yeah, the so-called Orech sovkhos. Later, they renamed it and formalized it and improved the management into leskhos. So they founded forest farms, the so-called leskhos. And here you can see a map of 2 rayons. Yeah, and you can see the dark red colors showing the kolchos, the light red, the sovkhos. So these were agricultural farms, and the green one, the forest farms. Yeah, where forestry was the main task, the main was stood in the center. What were the tasks of these leskhos? Yeah, forestry measures, afforestation, sanitary wood cutting, and wood processing. You can see it here on these historical images. Yeah. And collection of nuts, fruits, and herbs. Before, I would say the local population was not very much interested in nuts. They didn't use it. I mean, there were farmers on the ground or herders, but here, for the first time, actually, the nuts became an important resource. Yeah, so things changed again. Yeah, and these nuts were then very systematically collected by these lessos and exchanged with kolchos, sovkhos, or sold on the market to get other products which were necessary for the population of the leskhos. And then in the 1960s, another function developed: tourism. Yeah, tourism. I mean, 100 years ago, there was no tourism in the area, or even 70 years ago. No, 70 years ago. Yeah, in the 60s it started. Yeah, they found out, oh, this is a good spot. Central Asia, in particular, the Fergana Valley is very hot in summer, and this is a cooler area, a pleasant area, green. People liked to go there, and then they founded a Pioneer Lager, Tour Bazaar, etc., and people spent their holidays here in this area. And then another point is that for some people, these forests had a different meaning, spiritual function. Yeah. Here's a quotation: more and more people are coming for recreation to the nut forests. This is from 1962. Most of them pilgrimage secretly to the holy sites, because during Soviet socialism, they didn't like it, religion, very much. They shouldn't try to keep it very, very low, on a low level. They didn't, and they tried to forbid it, to ban it, that people don't go it, but they did. They went to the forest, and here you can see a holy tree where they put some clothes and then a prayer and so on. So, and the Soviet administration also tried to keep these forests, to protect them, yeah, but mainly for economic reasons. Yeah, and here's another quotation: the walnut fruit forests are of important economic relevance, not only for the region, but also for the whole Fergana Valley. They preserve and regulate the water regime of the mountain rivers which supply the irrigation systems of the Fergana Valley. And we all know it, the white gold of Central Asia, the cotton, this was much more important than this forest, the nuts. So, but not to disturb the water cycle. That we need this. So these forests should be protected as well. They can be used, but we should keep them, because this is, this is from the very beginning the idea of erosion control and of keeping the water cycle stable. So the understanding of nature, according to the Soviet socialism, was seen as a storage of raw materials. It was seen as chaotic, senseless, adverse, alien, and wild, and should be tamed. Yeah, should be organized and utilized. It was seen as a backward antipode of socialist society. So let's go to the nature, to the environment, use it. Yeah. So, of course, there were also very strong protection regulations in the Soviet Union, and the Zapovedniki were founded already during the Soviet Union, but other parts was the idea of using them. I mean, it's not much different in capitalist system, I would say, but yeah. So that is now our next and final era, the post-Soviet phase, which started in 1991, and that's called it here continuity and paradigm change in the post-Soviet phase. Landed forests are still in state ownership. Just this is really in opposite to what happened to the kolkhos and sovkhos, which were arable land, and I think in Kazakhstan as well, like in Kyrgyzstan, was privatized. Yeah, also private farms were established, or maybe new forms of collective farms. But the lessors of the state, the forests are still state-owned. Yeah, but the local population were given usage rights to use the meadows, to use arable land, there are some, and to collect nuts. And now, according to political ecology, according to this approach, just want to have a look at what kind of actors do we have today? What are their interests in these resources, in these forests? We have first the forest administration, the lessors. They are still interested in forestry and in territorial control. But their power is much limited nowadays. And the staff was dramatically reduced, and it's very difficult to control the whole forest today. Then we have the local population. Yeah, they need to make their livelihoods. Yeah, as for subsistence, or as they see the forest for their subsistence to get some products which they can directly consume, or as for income generation. In particular, the nuts. The people in these forests don't eat nuts, only very limited. They collect it and sell it to get income. Yeah, but they need fodder for the animals, and they need a lot of firewood because there was no delivery of coal anymore with the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And as you can see, we made a survey, and according to the survey, almost every household is going to the forest. So it was in the 90s. I think it changed, or in the beginning of the 2000s. Nowadays, I think it changed a bit. Went to the forest to collect nuts, to collect fruits, and to collect firewood. And some others even collected morels, these are small mushrooms, herbs, and timber, and sold it on the market. And then we had totally new actors coming into the countries. International timber companies. They were usually faster than the researchers or others, and they know where we can get some, they can get money, or and the companies from the US, from Britain, other parts of Germany came to send their, I don't know, salesmen or whatever, or their experts to Kyrgyzstan to look for these burlwoods. Yeah, here. Oh. And they bought it and took that and used it for luxury cars or very expensive furniture. Yeah, and there was a lot of corruption during this time, and a lot of old trees were cut to make a profit out of it. And then we have other actors, international traders, which were interested in the walnuts trading. They were now sold to Turkey and to the Gulf states. And wild apples, although they made juice out of it. And people find that there's another resource which was never seen as a resource in this forest, these morels. Yeah, I think a French guy came to the area and said, "Oh wow, you have these morels. They are very, very expensive in Europe. You should collect them and sell them." Yeah, and then people went to the forest and sold and collected the morels and sold them and got some good income. And tourism, which is still today a very successful economic activity in the area, increased. And of course, the tourist operators, the homestays, etc., have their own interest what to do with these forests, to keep them, to protect them, that the tourists come, that they see, oh, you have a lovely forest. That's yeah. So they are also an important actor, which is very much in favor not to destroy these forests. And when you read some of the advertisement about the walnut fruit forest, you can see that the tourist operators advertise them with real nature and natural forests. But as you can imagine, when you listen to what I said, they are really natural, are these forests not? They're intensely used for the last 100 years. Yeah, what we have is actually a used forest. Somehow it's even a plantation nowadays, but it looks nice still. It's still green, and it's yeah, in this area. People like to come, and you have seen it's a nice panorama there. It's a lovely landscape. So the uniqueness and the ecological, the uniqueness and the ecological significance of the forest became an environmental narrative. Yeah. And finally, we have another group of actors, international scientists, and I was one of them. Yeah, we came to the area, and our project started actually with the idea, oh, let's make a nature protection zone out of it. This forest, they should be protected. They are unique in the world. These walnut fruit forests, they should become a national park or so. It's still today, it's not a national park, and I think it's difficult to make a national park out of it because people, as I said, have different interests, some of them. And for the livelihoods of the people, especially in the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, were so important for their survival. So it was not possible to ban it so that they couldn't use it anymore, yeah, that they couldn't use the forest. So, and these international scientists just see the global significance of the forests as a genetic pool, and they internationalize the forests by favoring global interests over local concerns. And this is dangerous. And this is, I don't know if you ever came across to this term, often also called as green grabbing, which is happening in Tanzania or in Chile, for example. That people from America, from Europe have the idea, oh, we should protect this area. But usually other local people live there and use this. And strict protection means human activities should be avoided. Yeah, and this creates conflicts. So the consequence, what are the consequences out of it? We have a intensified collection of nuts and wild fruits, and which is, I would say, not a big problem because we get nuts every year. But the big problem is increased felling of firewood. There was a sharp increase of the local population. The population grows in the area, and as I said, as already mentioned, during Soviet time, every household was delivered by black coal for heating and cooking, but this stopped in the 1990s, and the people just needed an alternative, which was next to their houses, and then they went to the forest, took out the wood as firewood, and this degraded the forest very much. Another big problem is the uncontrolled pasturing. Yeah. Animals are, yeah, the account for the people. Yeah, they invest in animals very much, and you can see how the number of livestock increased in the area dramatically, and the less of this the forest administration is too weak to control it. So a lot of livestock nowadays graze in the forest and also destroyed small plants in forests. And finally, we can see a transformation of forests into arable lands and meadows. People would like to get fodder for their animals, for their livestock, or directly arable land where they can produce other things. And the consequence is environmental change and the degradation. Here is a comparison of two aerial photographs. Actually, you don't see much difference. But if you look a bit on the ground, you can see a lot of difference because all the shrubs, all the small trees, or most of them are cut, and only the big walnut trees are left because they're important to get income to the walnut nut collection. So I come to the end, to my conclusion. What I wanted to show is that the state of the walnut fruit forest today is very much influenced by historically changing human utilizations and perceptions about the value and role of these forests. Yeah, you could see how it changed. Yeah, in the beginning, nuts didn't play a role. Timber didn't play a big role. Yeah, and so on. And then this tourism, it changed with its morals, etc. The fields of actors. The field of actors and their interests, as well the institutions, changed significantly over time. Yeah, have different regulations, different rules. And I have just show you two images which comprise these different actors. This was during the Soviet time. Yeah, there were, you could see, here, sorry. You see in the middle the walnut fruit forest and what they offer, which we call resources: birds, herbs, grass, timber, walnuts, fruits, and firewood. And what services do they offer? Ecological functions, their state property, and their recreation area. And outside you can see the different actor groups: the local populations, the tourists, the government trade unions, the Soviet scientists, and the state forest administration. And they had different interests in these resources, which you can see: social economic interests, social cultural interests, ecological interests, political interests, etc., economic interests. Yeah. And this must be somehow dealt with, yeah, or this must be negotiated. Usually the powerful people are the ones who define what one should do. And the situation changed very much today. Yeah, still in the middle, the walnut fruit forest with all the products. We have now some new one like timber fruit. No, it was also harvested before, but the morels, for example. And what Yeah, thank you. We have now merchants and businessmen, still the local populations with their interests, the tourists with social cultural interests. We have different forms of tourism nowadays: community-based tourism, private tourism, tourism organized by the government trade unions. And then we have international scientists as new group, and still this on the left side, the state forest administration with their specific interests. So I hope you could follow somehow what I said and imagine how how the interest, how the group of actors, how the perceptions and the management and the utilization of a forest can change over time. You can use it, you can make a study by yourself. I don't know, it mustn't be a forest. Take a meadow, take a hill, or I don't know, a valley here nearby, Almaty. Yeah. So the forms of nature conservation and practices of material acquisition are not ontologically given. Yeah, we shouldn't take it as given. Yeah? Just think about it. Why is it as it is today? But they are produced within discursive processes and, of course, other historical processes. So, thank you very much for your attention. And
yeah, thanks, Matthias, for this very inspiring talk. And I guess it's actually very illustrative and very close to our realities here in Central Asia. And it shows also how political ecology can basically illustrate also changes over time. It can illustrate how management methods are changing over time, how actor sets are changing over time. And I guess this is also very close to what we actually teach here at the department. It's about how areas are managed by humans. And I think, or I hope, there are questions in the auditory. So yeah, go ahead.
both, of course. I think this is not in opposite to the development, I would say. Yeah, but I mean this is mountain area covered by forests, valuable forests, but you cannot do much something different out of it. I think the present mix of usage, yeah, with this recreation and the collection of nuts, etc., is really not in opposite to the economic development of the area. And what I find out, we just came from this area, I was there 3 days ago. The pressure is much lower nowadays. Yeah, there's just not enough forest, and people need to earn more. Yeah, they cannot get much out of their small forest area. That means the importance of the forest for each household is decreasing dramatically. Some people are migrants in Kazakhstan and Russia, send money back. Others started businesses, etc. And I think it could somehow be in line. Yeah. So, but it would be wonderful to keep them, to protect them somehow. Yeah. But at the moment, I don't see a very bad intensification of utilization. I would say it could it's more or less stable at the moment. Yeah.
I have a question, actually two. So what you're saying is basically the role of the forest in the local economy is diminished through the past, let's say, 30 years after the independence, right?
No, it was super important maybe second half of the 90s or in the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. But nowadays, I think it's decreasing. Yeah,
because the economy of local populations
yes,
living
there. Because they have alternatives and they're looking for
yes, exactly. So what are there changes in the composition of the population itself? So what I mean is, for example, you mentioned that some of them are relying on remittances from Russia, Kazakhstan, so they're working there. Do you see, because you have recently visited, do you see that they lack, let's say, younger, able-bodied people who might be interested in working the forest land, whatever it is? Do you see a change in that as well?
Not yet, I would say. There are many young people still there. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a specific situation, I would say. I mean, I went to the village or small town called Aslanbob. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And this is actually an Uzbek enclave. I mean, it's part of Kyrgyzstan. But a diaspora somehow, yeah, or an enclave of Uzbeks. And we have a really high population growth, higher than the average in the country. That means there are still a lot of people, yeah, and they try to make other businesses, especially tourism, which is very flourishing at the moment. And even if there are people now as labor migrants outside of the country, there's still enough in the area. Is it what you mentioned? Yeah. Yeah. It's so different, I think, in what I heard, for example, in some part of Tajikistan also, where you really have a lack of male persons nowadays. Yeah, that women have to. Yeah,
you have villages composed of like 90% women.
Yes,
yeah, that's that kind of.
This is not yet the case. Not in this area. So
okay. Yeah. But all right. So the second question, obviously we all know that about the regulatory chaos of the 90s. So the timber companies, the multinationals and international companies come in, and then they start cutting trees and so on and so forth. And there are two aspects to it. So one is the regulatory aspect. Has that improved? Hopefully, that's one. And two, is the competition between those who make profit out of chopping down the trees and those who make profit out of preserving them, like for morale or for, is that also playing, hopefully, any role in preservation of the forest?
Yeah, thank you very much for this interesting question. I think these international timber companies are not there anymore because there are not any old trees anymore. They cut them. They are gone. And we have now middle-aged trees a lot. And so it is not of any interest for them. And there was when I did my research there, they always talked about there's big competitions, big corruption in every level, etc., even to the federal government or whatever. I don't know. I couldn't prove it actually. So, and I think this is not the case anymore. So therefore, I think the majority of the people there profit from the existence and the good state of the forest nowadays. Yeah, yeah. So, and I think the idea to create a protection zone there at Zaporizhzhnik or Sakaznik, I don't know, already existed in Soviet time. It was, and I think on the paper there is some protection, but in reality, not really. I would say people just use the forest as they like. They have their parcels or their territories, and they go there. They plant trees. They cut some trees. There's, I think, a ban to cut walnut trees, and this is also controlled by the lessors. But in how far it really worked nowadays, and I don't know. I didn't do enough field research over recently, therefore. So, but I think the situation really improved a bit. Yeah, yeah. It's not as tight anymore. So, yeah. Okay. Further question? Or? I don't get it really. What you mean? There's a process that. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, yeah, now I got it. Sorry. To be honest, I don't know really how much the area of the forest changed. And as you could see on this one image, when you look from above, there's no big difference. So therefore, I'm not sure, but it could be that the forested area today is as big as it was 120 years ago. But the composition of the forest changed because of plantation during Soviet time, because of cutting of trees and taking out some of the trees. This changed very much, but the whole area probably not very much actually. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering about the future. So we covered the past and present times. We understand now with this sustainable agenda and the new mechanisms of developing it. I'm interested in how could these forestry projects, how they can be linked with the new types of activities, such as, for example, carbon credits, where you get them from the forests or forestry projects, and how can the locals can use these programs to help reforestation, to say.
Very good idea. Yeah, why not? I mean, what we are talking about is these forests are really not big. I mean, you are from here and you are not used to large forests, but when I talk to German students, I would say it's not the black forests or what we have in Germany, where you have thousands of square kilometers forest or I don't know, Canada, etc., or Russia. They are small, but this is a very interesting point. I would say, I mean, 10 years ago, I would have said no chance, because people need pasture land, because they need grass for the animals. And as I've shown you, the number of livestock increased dramatically, and this was a very important income. And but I could imagine, I think that the role of animal husbandry, of livestock, is also decreasing. People don't want to be farmers anymore. Yeah? People are educated, young people are educated, go to cities. I mean, these processes are going on many countries, yeah. And therefore, it could be that this pressure on grassland is decreasing, yeah, that because people don't go anymore. And then would be a wonderful idea to increase the area, yeah, of forests, and we are connected to such programs, and then they get support us. So, yeah, we should yeah, tell them. Could be, yeah. Maybe not yet, but maybe in a couple of years. Yeah. So when there's less pressure on it. Yeah. Thank you.
So I also want to have a question. So in the past, these walnut forests were extremely popular with scientists. Even though they are small, lots of interest, lots of people were doing research there for PhD habilitation. GIZ was there. I wonder if there's anything that is still not researched in the area. Is there something that you would suggest is still interesting to look at?
Oh, this is too honest what you say. I wanted to hide it. But I said, when I talked yesterday to colleagues in Kyrgyzstan about new project ideas, or the day before yesterday, I said, I don't want to work in this. I mean, I love this area, and I hope to show you that I was really interested in it, but I said it's over research somehow. You are right. Yeah, there were too many projects. Of course, you could find new questions, etc. And there's, again, I don't know, PhD work, a PhD thesis or study going on there. So, but it is really one of the most researched areas in Kyrgyzstan, these forests, because they are so unique. Yeah, and therefore many people go. But of course, if you really want, you can find new questions. I relate them to nutrition, to food, to health, or whatever it is. Yeah. You want? No? There's one, please. Also a good question, and difficult to give you an answer because I don't really know. I think, I mean, the intention to take care of it was there all the time, but yeah, I don't know if I can say, but I mean, what the people not working in the forest administration always said, it's very corrupt, the people there. And so, which was also, I mean, a matter of fact that they also tried to make their living, yeah. And to get a position there, you had to pay, and if you have the position, then you have to get the money in, get it back, actually, what you paid already. So I don't know how it is today, if it's still so, or if it's different. Be honest, I cannot say. So yeah. Actually, also for me personally, it was a chance. There was a group of researchers. I mean, this was after my PhD. I think I was candidate then. Yeah, that's the right word. Candidate. Yeah, Habilitant. Okay, but maybe okay. In the past, it was called candidate here. Okay, I was postdoc, and there were a group of researchers who wanted to conduct this project, and I was very curious to participate in this project. So I didn't choose it. I didn't know even didn't know the forest, but I wanted. It was a big wish of mine to do research in a post-Soviet country, because this was. I mean, I'm a children of the Cold War, and I just seen the one side, and I wondered what is going on in the Soviet Union and so on. And it was a great chance to see it there and to go there, and it was super interested for me. It could have been Kazakhstan as well, or another country. So, but yeah. Thank you very much.
So yeah. Yeah, thanks, Matthias, once again for this very inspiring presentation. And I hope you also were inspired. And yeah, hope to see you again here at KIMAP.